and good afternoon. My name is Jaylene Moore, and you're watching Levels. I'm accompanied today by Maisha, who is the political correspondent for Latin American Student Union, and she's accompanying me here today to talk about um, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as they have our new administration and our feelings on it, counterpoints, things that I feel like people have not been talking about, things that have been overlooked. Because as we have a new administration, especially dealing with the Trump era, it is very important that we remain critical. So, Maisha, if you want to say your hellos.
Hi, I'm Maisha. I'm a junior. I'm majoring in math, and politics are something that I'm very invested in just because I'm an angry person and I like having an outlet for my anger. That's it.
And your pronouns.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so
No
dumb.
problem.
Sorry. She, her, hers. And is that it?
Yeah.
In
So
Bengali. Yep.
as could you like describe what your position is on lawsuit?
So I am in charge of, I guess, keeping my e-board and as well as our general body updated on the local recent politics that are happening here in the States and in Latin America. I make a weekly post on just one current event, and throughout the semester, I'm also in charge of organizing a philanthropy. Last semester, we organized a philanthropy for the Amazon indigenous groups in the Amazon, which was pretty successful. We raised, crap for how much we raised, but I think it was like 100, which for me was like, no, I was really proud of that.
Yeah,
And
of course, we're in a pandemic.
and I'm also in charge of writing one political piece. So, and also collaborating with BSU for at least 3 general body meetings.
Nice. So I chose to have Maisha for this show because yes, she is our political correspondent, but like she said, she's angry. And I know she'll keep it real. So um I want to like start off in kind of giving you all an overview of why we wanted to talk about this. So, Kamala Harris has a conflicting past that has made it very hard for many people of color to either be, they can't decide if they want to be for her or against her. Because Kamala Harris, as you know, is the first Black woman and South Asian woman to be the vice president of the United States. So, in one sense, it's a big win for people of color, as we've never had this sort of reputation, especially for women of color. But she has a conflicting past, which Maisha, if you want to add on that, of what her things that she has done throughout her political career in this country.
So I think like you said, it is really important to have a Black South Indian woman in office. I think that's amazing. I think that's a huge win for America, and it reflects a huge shift towards progressivism in the voter pool, given that so many more people voted and so many more people are aware of what's happening in politics today. But in terms of her policies, she's anti-trans. She sent trans women to men's prisons. She's denied trans people health care in prison. She demonizes sex work, talking about how it contributes to the transmission of HIV and AIDS. She's incarcerated Black individuals at a rate 12 times higher than that of white individuals. Back when Trump introduced his 700 billion military budget, she supported it. And 700, we got $600. Not we. Some of American citizens got $600 for their recent stimulus package. So compared to, and they tell us that they don't have money. So given that she and a lot of other politicians support a $700 billion military project that's going to go towards killing kids in the Middle East abroad. I don't know. And overall, she's also pro Israel, which for me is just a little insulting. I don't know. Like I can't respect anybody who supports modern day apartheid. Just to me, it just feels icky.
Right.
But yeah, and she's also like, enabled a lot of police misconduct. She's openly, refused to, not openly refused, but she has been pushed to, help some inmates, escape death row or just help in general. And she just kind of steers away from that.
And so, knowing like all of that, so how does that make you feel as a South Asian woman to see her in office?
I think that I am really happy that, America once again was able to like, was able to like, gather up and like, look into both candidates and see, who they want. And I think it's so important that like, because she was elected, that shows that Americans are becoming more involved in politics. Because as of like, maybe 8 years ago, not everybody knew, but with social media, with everything just happening, information's everywhere. It's so easy to access information. So I'm very happy that America was able to like, come together and have somebody that isn't Trump. I was terrified that Trump was going to get reelected. It was a very close thing. So I'm very happy that, we do have a Black South Indian woman. But I just think that
You
I
wish it would have been a better representation.
I that and especially I just don't like how a lot of people are not excusing, but like looking past what she's done just because of her cultural heritage. I feel like she milks, her being South Indian just to like, and people, feed into that. And as a result, they turn a blind eye to her prosecutorial work and her foreign policies. Like Mindy Kaling. I don't know if you know her, but she's just this like, like celebrity. She posted her daughter, what's it called? Watching Kamala on TV. She was like, "Oh, look, mommy, she
Yeah,
looks."
I saw that.
And I was like, that was the most corniest thing ever because Mindy Kaling is a grown woman. Like you are supporting a war criminal. Like you feel me? Like
Yeah.
I am so happy that kids have that image on like TV. Like, oh, that's someone who looks like me. That's amazing. But as a grown woman, like you could excuse a child because what's she gonna know about Syria and the kids in cages? What is the child gonna know? But as a grown
Right.
woman, you are responsible for like who you endorse,
And
and
I
people just feed into like her. Someone was like roti is like a traditional like I guess like Indian or South Indian or in general desi meal, and people were like, "Do you think she's gonna eat roti in office?" I was like, "Are you dumb? Like there are so many things to focus on, so many things." Like there's so many things to focus on, and yeah, would rather focus on like I don't know. I just feel like it's milked to the point where people don't realize what she's actually done.
right. And I completely agree with you. I think this is really mostly beneficial for the younger generation because we were kids when Obama was elected as president, and obviously Obama has done a lot of things in his both of his like terms that were very conflicting to and very hard to support him. But when we were 8 years old back in 2008, and we just see this black man being elected as the president of the United States for the first time ever, and a black first lady, um, as a child, you're just there like looking at the
You're
screen.
amazed.
You're amazed. You're like, okay, this thing that seems so impossible, it ain't that
It's
impossible
possible,
anymore.
right?
And oh, there's someone that looks like me or looks like somebody in my family that is running the country.
And that's okay because we were kids. We were 8 years old, and also social
Exactly.
media wasn't as big then. Now we have Twitter. Now information is so easy accessible. It wasn't as easy for adults like our age or like people our age back then in 2008 to get the information that we have now. It's so
Right.
accessible to us. So right as of right now, like there is no excuse for us not to not be educated. If
Right.
you're not educated, you're intentionally being ignorant because it's right there. I hate people who say like, I don't like, I don't really want to deal with politics. Like you're just intentionally ignorant.
Yeah, I can't stand
I
that.
hate
I'm
that.
like, politics affect you every day.
Everything. It's not some
Every day.
civil talk. It's not small talk over tea. It's people's livelihoods. So
Every
when
single
people
day. And that's and like mentioning that, that's where we also get screwed over a lot because people don't want to. There's a lot of people that don't want to be involved in politics. They don't realize that it affects their livelihood every day. They only want to come and vote for when we have presidents. There's a lot of important elections that happen, and the most important elections are the small ones that are directly in your community
Right, because then they're
that
the ones who take
affect
it to
you
Senate.
every day. So
Right,
if
they're the
you're
ones who take it to
upset.
Senate. Right.
Exactly. So when we see our neighborhoods being gentrified, none of us showed up to the community board to vote against these things, and now these people are taking advantage of our absence and taking over the places we live in and making it giving us things that we did not ask for or want or need.
That's so true.
So um I'm glad though that something that happened throughout the Trump era that has not happened before is it forced people to be more involved in politics. We're still not at where we need to be,
Mhm.
but we're definitely a lot better than where we were during the Obama administration.
Definitely. I think another thing is a lot of people have this mentality, like, every man for himself. So a lot of people voted for Trump, such as the people in the Midwest. They voted for Trump because he promised them jobs, right? They were like, yeah, he's this, he's that, and but he's gonna get us jobs, and they need to feed their families. I don't really respect that, but at the same time, I understand the need for to want to put fit, like seeing somebody promise you a job, from promise you, income, a steady income. Why, like they would vote for somebody promises them that. Once they saw that Trump wasn't true to his word, that's when they flipped over. So I think that it's so important to, like, that so many more people are just aware of what's happening, even in the smallest sense, just become more aware of what's happening, and to just, I don't know. I think that politics seem a lot harder than actually is. You
For
feel me?
real.
Like, a lot of things people think that it's like, so many complicated words. It's not. A lot of it's just like, it can be simplified. And I think that, like, if someone doesn't want to read an article, watch a video.
Right.
Like,
And it's like, a lot of people are upset like with Mayor de Blasio in New York City, right? Because
mhm.
he's, let's keep it light. But did you go out and vote for your mayor? Did you vote? This is what we got. Did we show up when we were supposed to show up? And another thing is that, you know, with this election, right? I didn't support Trump. I didn't really support Joe Biden either. But I went out and voted just because I know that there's a lot of people that don't have the opportunity or the privilege to vote.
Right.
Whether you be your person that has been incarcerated and
Mhm.
that human right has been taken away from you, whether you're not old enough to vote, but the decisions affect you,
Mhm.
whether you don't have citizenship here yet you're affected by all the decisions that the president makes all the time. It's all those things like that, especially also in Puerto Rico. They're
Mhm.
affected by all of our decisions, and
And
they can't even
right,
vote. That
they
is the
didn't
biggest
receive like
scam
a
in
single,
America.
right. They didn't receive a single stimulus package. I thought that's so insulting. They pay
And they didn't get
taxes.
hurricane relief either. But then they're American territory. We can go there whenever we want with just a driver's license, exploit the island, and then we don't no one
But
shows up.
American tourism is disgusting.
And especially throughout this pandemic, Puerto Rico has been a hotspot for everybody to go to when they don't have the
Most type
resources
of aid.
that we have
Most type of
to
aid.
bounce back like with medicine in the way we can. So that's another thing. And even like now talking about Joe Biden and his
Mhm.
like conflicting past, like number one is that he's an old white man that has been a part of politics since our parents were babies. So we already know that it's already going to be a very conflicting. But I guess to give an overview for everyone else that may not know, um Joe Biden was in support of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which supported the death penalty and capital punishment. He supported the war on drugs, which was really big in inner cities like New York City. And he also was in support of the Secure Fence Act of 2006, which authorized like and partially funded the construction of fencing along the Mexican border. And a lot of and ICE, the cages for children were created when Joe Biden was vice president of our country, which is never talked about. Yes, Trump wanted to build a wall. Yes, Trump put more people in the cages, but he didn't make the cages. The cages were made during the Obama administration.
That's something
That
nobody
has
talks
been
about.
overlooked. So
Nobody
now
talks about that.
nobody talks about it, and that's a big problem because now you're coming back into the administration, not as vice president now, but as president.
With no type of growth whatsoever. No type of
So we were angry about those cages that were at the border. You created them, get rid of them. Are you going to get rid of them? What's your stance on it? You have nothing to say. Because when during the presidential debate, when they're asking who created those cages, he couldn't even sit there and admit it to the country as a man.
He talked about keeping America safe. He was like, I'm only doing this to keep Americans safe. My first priority is America, da da da. And that's another thing. Americans are so selfish. They don't care about lives abroad whatsoever. Despite how terribly and how violently we exploit other countries for the resources, they will never care. They'll open up walls, they'll place kids in cages, they'll place bans on, like which countries can come in, but they will never ever stop exploiting these same countries.
Right.
Same what you were talking about it with Puerto Rico. Americans are constantly visiting, exploiting Puerto Rico, exposing them to the virus, but Puerto Rico doesn't receive anything.
Exactly. So like I wanted to ask you, what do you feel like, what are your hopes for this very conflicting administration?
I think that like despite how like terrible Biden is in terms of like social policy, such as like, immigration, foreign policy, I think that I'm very relieved to have somebody who believes in science. Trump literally said once, science doesn't know what I do. Do you know how crazy that is?
I'm still stuck on the climate control thing.
I was like,
you're like, babe.
Like, I just never thought that science was debatable. I never thought
right, because it's so fact. It's so right.
It's so fact-based.
Why?
Like
this isn't an opinion.
It's not supposed to be an opinion at all. But apparently it is. And it scared me how much of America was like, yeah, like, we don't believe what the scientists say. Trump said, like, what? People who got degrees, people who have PhDs, MDs, whatever they all say the same thing, but Trump was just so against it. So I'm very excited to have an administration that's very pro-science, like that believes in science. We just re-entered the Paris Climate Agreement, which I'm very happy about. And also in terms of how Trump handled the virus, he instilled so much frenzy. He lied so much. I'm looking forward to more transparency between the government and the people in terms of this virus, because that's what needs to happen.
Recently too, Joe Biden signed for all the immigrant families that were like ripped apart from each other against their will to all be reunited.
Good.
He signed that last week, so that made me happy. It definitely made me a little bit more hopeful that he's gonna put his money where his mouth is. Like, you came in hot, so
another thing that really
delivering.
Another thing that really bothered me was, I guess, just once again, like the lack of transparency. You know how they keep telling us we don't have money for this, we don't have money for that. Like we keep asking for more stimulus packages. At some point, we ran out of masks during the early stages of the pandemic. Do you remember that?
Yes.
At that same time, the U.S. donated, I think, 1 million masks to Israel. While we were suffering a shortage, we donated 1 million masks to Israel, while our people were like, And like another thing is, once again, the $700 billion military budget. I hate that the U.S. puts so much money towards terrorizing other countries, because no one's gonna hurt us. No one is gonna hurt us. I don't know what they think that we're, being attacked by or threatened by. Nobody is going to attack the US.
Right.
They're using this money to terrorize. And that's the difference. You feel me? Like, I remember when, like, I think it was someone's, I think Trump sent out a drone and killed, I think it was a president, leader of Iran or Iraq. But like, people were making jokes on Twitter, like, oh, we're all gonna die. Nobody's gonna touch the US. War will never touch US soil. It's gonna hurt the kids abroad. It's gonna hurt the people abroad. So I just hate how so much of our money goes towards the military. And I don't think that's gonna change during this administration. And that's really upsetting
I
to
don't
me.
think that changed for a very long
It's
time.
not.
It makes no sense to me because in this country, like apparently we value war so much, we give all this money to it, but then it's like another weird thing is that then the veterans, they like don't get compensated at all.
Where's the money going?
It's like
Where is this money going?
there's a lot of people that really love this country so much that they want to put their life on the line for it. That's not everybody's reason into joining the military,
Mhm.
but a lot of other people it is their reason, and I don't get it because
I don't
the
like, what are you
country
fighting
doesn't
for?
love you.
This country doesn't care about you one bit.
Exactly. It just doesn't even make any sense to me. I
And
also
there are people who, like, the military targets inner city schools, inner city kids for sure.
right. Mhm.
I went to Bronstein, which is like, predominantly white and like Asian school, and right across the street was DeWitt Clinton, which was a predominantly, like,
I
black
know.
and
Yeah.
right. They would never, the military people would never table in front of Bronx Science. They would table in front of Clinton. They're never going to market towards like the white kids, because so when they market towards like these inner city kids, they know what they're doing. They promise them free college,
Right. And
Yeah.
that's sad. Like, why is it in this country you gotta go and sacrifice your life, put your whole life on the line just to receive a free education and basic benefits like health insurance, a decent pay? Because another thing is that it's a very big misconception that these men that these people that serve in the military receive so much money because a lot of them
They don't.
really don't.
It takes a long time. They really don't. Who is that girl that died this summer?
Vanessa, I forgot her last name, but her first name's Vanessa.
Right. I remember, she put so much in, and then, she was harassed, she was molested,
She
and then
was
she was
raped and literally murdered.
and they couldn't tell her anything, tell her family anything. So it's like, what are these, like,
She was murdered for
people of color
her
doing?
rapists be held accountable.
Right. They couldn't even do that. So it makes me so sad to see all these, like, people of color going into the military to serve a country that doesn't care to serve them back whatsoever.
Right.
There's no type of gain whatsoever, and it's so sad that they're marketed towards the military as a option because they can't afford college.
Right.
I
also like wanted, moving on to something else, is do you think it was a strategic move for Biden to elect Harris as his vice president?
For sure. I think that Black women are the Democratic Party's most loyal voters. You feel me? So Black women won Joe Biden the election. They were the pull factor towards his nomination, right? So I saw that, Biden choosing Kamala as his running mate, that definitely wouldn't have hurt him. And he knew that, he knew that if he had a Black woman next to him by his side, that would incentivize Black women to vote for, vote for him even more,
because it was really, I think he had put Kamala as his vice president, I think like right after BLM happened. It was all very calculated.
It was not a coincidence.
It was extremely calculated. Like, why wasn't she a consideration before this?
What's it called? Oh, I actually looked into that. They never agreed up until this. They never agreed at all on anything. I was looking into, like, why he chose her, and like, I was reading about all their arguments. Like, she would call him out on stuff that they would never agree on, like, anything up until this, like, nomination of what's it called? I was gonna
maybe
say
the only thing they agreed on was trying to get Trump out of office. So
right, because like
they were like, all right, guess we gotta do this.
Like, who wants to vote for two white guys?
Yeah, like no one's
Two white guys, one who doesn't believe in science, the other one who believes in like electroshock therapy. Like, the fact that somebody like that ran our country, that's so scary. But I'll talk about that in a bit. And another thing is, we all know that Joe Biden is pro-police. He does not believe in defunding the police, and he has made that clear a bunch of times, even after, like what happened this summer with all the protests, with everything. He's still pro-police. I remember during one of his debates, they asked him about it, and he was like, the police are necessary. Like they're the ones who are going to help us minimize police brutality, which I don't get it. Like, why do we need it? But I think that he also chose Kamala because of the fact that while she was campaigning, at the start of her campaign, she was, she aligned herself with the rest of the country. She was very strategic with it. She expressed her distrust and her disgust towards everything that's been happening. She called for a ban on chokeholds, racial profiling, right? So on the surface, she aligned herself with the rest of the country. And Joe Biden saw that. He was like, okay.
I also wish that like Bernie Sanders would have stayed in.
They greased Bernie Sanders, and
because he dropped out right at the beginning of the pandemic, which I think was the worst thing for him to do, because the way this pandemic played out and then BLM happening in the midst of that would have made him win the election.
But not even that. They were never going to let a true liberal, a true leftist win the election. Do you see why Joe Biden was chosen to be the Democratic nominee? Because he's basically a Republican. He's operating as a liberal. Right. They were never going to let somebody who actually has morals in that sense, where who actually cares about other people win. They're never going to let that happen. And that's why they greased Bernie. He didn't want to drop out. I generally feel like, what's it called? Whatever system they have up there, they were never going to let a true, a socialist like Bernie Sanders win.
Right.
Regardless, he was doomed to lose from the get-go. Same thing that happened in 2016. He lost to Hillary back in 2016. They were never going to let him actually win. And that's the saddest
thing. Good campaign. This past year, his campaign, I thought, was much better than 2016.
No, it was. And this, regardless of the campaign, he just is the best candidate available, as objectively as possible. But people just, the right will never, ever accept
Bernie's been about it, too. He walked in the civil rights movement. He been about it.
And I read so many articles.
1 second, let me just put my laptop to charge before you see this. So I'm gonna ask you, we'll talk about this a little bit more, and then I'll probably ask you 2 more questions, and then we'll end it off.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so all right, continue. Or do you want me to just ask another question? Because do you remember what you're saying?
I don't remember.
Okay, so another thing that I also besides Bernie, I don't understand why we also don't vote for the Green Party. Why do we always admit to Republican or Democrat?
Because the Green Party will never get the support it needs. It's never gonna as realistically as possible. Not enough people will ever vote for it. That means there needs to be a serious and intense wave of reform for that to ever even to even consider that to happen. I really do wish. However, once again, the country is basically, we have Republicans, Democrats, 2 wings of the same bird, of the same corrupt, racist, imperialistic bird that's never going to change.
Right.
The Green Party is too good for them. Bernie Sanders, the Green Party, they're all too good for America.
Right.
It's never going to happen. And as sad as that is, I'm a pessimist. I just never see as soon as I saw Bernie running, I was like, poor baby, I love you so much, but I knew it wasn't they weren't gonna let it happen.
I agree. Right. It was too good to be true. Do you think we will resort back to the Obama times where there was a blind eye on the systematic racial issues going on in this country?
I don't think so, just because of the fact that once again, we have so much more like access to information now. Like back then, we were all 8 years old, da, 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 and there wasn't that much information going around. Like there wasn't that. There was obviously, but it wasn't as much access. You feel me?
I feel like also Gen Z is different. Like Gen
We
Z
care
is
more about
rapid.
social issues. You feel me?
Yeah,
Older generations are more like financial, like fiscal policy based. We
mhm.
kind of shifted towards social policies.
Because we're feelers. Like this
Right.
generation is known as feelers, it very like in tune
Right.
with their emotions.
Mhm.
And
So we care a lot
I
more about
hate
social.
when people say that they want to look at politics from without emotion. Like
You
that's weird to me.
How do
Like
you
what
get
do
like
you
kids
mean?
in cages and be like, oh, but fiscally that
Yeah,
no, like it doesn't
like
make sense
that's
to me.
weird. It's very weird. And I'll tell
Because
you
those
why
are the
it's very
same
weird.
people who
Because like we said from the beginning, politics affect your livelihood.
exactly
That's you
politics
just being
are people's
human.
livelihoods. People who say that are the people who aren't affected by politics, they're the 1%. They're the ones who feel like they're above it. Regardless of what policy changes happen, they're not going to be affected. They're the same people. I know this girl who's literally part of the 1%, like in Binghamton, and she would always talk about how like she's neutral, how politics are a waste of time, how it's not real, how racism isn't that big of an issue, how this and that. We should focus on real issues like saving the turtles. And like it just scares me. Like people are so because when we talk about systematic racism, we don't talk about like I hate your skin color. Like it's not that. It's actual like the prison industrial complex. It's profiling based on
The education gap that exists in a lot of schools for black and brown
all of
children.
that. It's not just he said she said. It's
Right.
and that's
That's
the
the
thing
thing
that gets
that
people mixed up.
people think of racism on a very personal level.
Right, and that
It's
does
very
exist.
exhausting to have this conversation
Mhm. To
because
teach people constantly, you don't want to get
how many
taught.
times we gonna spell it out for you? Like, how don't you see? Like, this is the starting line, right?
Mhm.
You grew up in Long Island, you're here, and then
The
I
rest of the
grew up in
world
the
is out there.
Bronx, I'm back here. But here's the starting line. Here it is.
And like she just boggled my mind with how just like ignorant she was. She'd be like, "Isn't gentrification good?" And I'd be like, "What?" And she's like,
For
"Yeah,
who? For
it's actually
who?
like." I'm like, "It's
No, for
actually
who?
like it was scary how the bubble that people live in. You
Right.
feel it's so scary." But in terms of your question, I don't really think that we will go back to the Obama times. I feel like people are like celebrating Kamala because of her race, because of her background, and like that is good to do. But I think that we ignored a lot of Obama's faults because of his charisma, because of his background, because of like because we didn't know any better. I think that that's something that we have to fix here. Like, yes, we need to celebrate the present, like the new diversity in the office, but we can't, turn a blind eye to all that she's done.
Right. And I guess to end off the show, what do you think we learned throughout the Trump era that we will take into the new administration?
Something that I've learned is how scary the US is. Like I think that growing up in New York City, we grew up in a bubble of like diversity. You feel me? We were never exposed to rednecks and yeehaws and sister, brother, whatever. Like we were never exposed to all of that. So like seeing how the quiet majority of the country doesn't believe in science, that they, hate most people of color, that, like that scared me. I was like, what the hell? I didn't think like seeing that Trump based his campaign back in 2016 off straight lies, and it was constantly disproven on the news, and they didn't care. Like they just saw a white supremacist and they ran for it. You feel me? Like
Right.
everything he said was just pure hatred, and that's the difference. Like that's something I see. Obama, Trump, or Biden, all these politicians, they're the same thing. Trump was just open about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Trump was
And,
open about it, and they ran with it. He was
you
open.
know, it's like, okay, I wouldn't prefer one over the other, right? But to make like really hateful speeches like
Mhm.
that is very impactful
No, it
when it's
wasn't
coming from the
their
most
tweets.
important person in the country.
And he knew what he was doing too. He was appealing to those, like those that quiet majority that's been under a rock during the Obama. I don't remember what, like Bush, right? I sound so ignorant.
Yeah,
But I don't remember anything before that. But during Obama, you
because
didn't
we were
have
like,
as many hate crimes. Like the second that Trump started to campaign, the term Islamophobia was coined because of Trump. Because of him, hate crimes against Muslims spiked by 200% because of his campaign alone. That's scary. The fact that he was able to spike so many hate crimes against Muslims was terrifying to me. I was like, what the? I was so confused. I was like, I knew that it was bad because of 9/11, but seeing how he was able to like, you know, call to so many ignorance and racists that I didn't know existed. I didn't know the US was that bad. I didn't know so many
oh
people
yeah,
didn't
because
believe
we
in
was
science.
living, at the also at the same time is that it's now that we're adults, right? We're
Mhm.
just kids. We only see things ever like on a personal level, not really like as a global
Right,
or
right.
national issue. And you know, we grew up in New York City. That's growing up in a bubble
We
because
grew up in
there's
a
more
bubble.
there's more of us than there are of them. They're the white people are the minority in New York City.
Something I really love about Queens is like it's the most diverse like city in
Yeah,
all the entire world. I think I love that. And like that's crazy to me that like
it's
not
crazy because
everybody grows up like that. You feel
yeah,
me?
and
So
you have friends that are different than you or have different backgrounds than you, but it's not
right.
something that has ever been something to
We feel
fight.
that.
Rather, it's something to be like embraced.
Right. It's just something
So
that we
I
knew.
have having friends from all different backgrounds gave from a very young age, then I'm able to I was always, indulge in other cultures like and respectful of that as they were of mine. So when I went away to college and I'm in Binghamton, New York, right? I'm like, nah, this
So
ain't real, right? Am I in a Twilight
when
Zone?
I heard that Bing was a founding chapter for the KKK, I would call my mother. I'm like, take me back home. I did not want to be here no more. I was like, what? And one of the professors here was like a KKK member. I was like, I was scared. But yeah, like going back to my point, another thing was like science isn't that well respected. Like science, not a lot of people believe in science. I never knew that that was something debatable. Like social rights,
Oh, it's
whatever.
debatable if you're a white man and everyone listens to you and
But not
freaking
even that.
praises your
Like, you would
presence.
just assume that like a scientist, like science isn't something you debate. I never thought that. Like I knew that immigration, fiscal policies, like who gets taxed, that whatever. But science, like a climate change, like I didn't think that was something that. So I feel like I just learned how like the true America, like what America really is like. And I guess what we need to take to the next administration is that America needs to be
I
I'm
feel
trying to say
I I feel like America just needs to like live up what it's supposed to be. Like, yes, like if you look at like the founding of like America, they came here for basic human rights, yet they deny people of basic human rights. Everything is contradicting. It's a huge paradox. It
America
doesn't
is
make
fox in
sense.
sheep's clothing. It is a fox in sheep's clothing. We pretend to be better. We
Yeah.
pretend to be, a first world country, the land of freedom. Da da da. We are not the land of freedom. We are behind in education. We're about the only thing we lead in is the military. That's scary. The fact that we lead in the military, that's scary.
For real.
So I think that Americans just need to be more educated from now on, here on forth. We need to be
Absolutely.
checking our politicians. We can't just like, be like, oh, she tweeted something, she's so funny, ha ha ha. Like that's not like I see these politicians like tweeting memes and stuff, and I'm like, I see what they're trying to do, but at the same time, it's like we can't let their relatability, their charisma blind us from like, what they
Mhm.
really are like. Because Joe Biden, I see him tweeting like pictures of his dogs, da, da, da. I'm like, okay, but like defund the police. Like I think that we need to hold more people accountable, including ourselves. We need to like do the research to go and vote for the smaller elections. We
Right.
need to, like just take a much more active role in how this country runs.
Right.
Because while we don't have all the power, like, at the end of the day, like, we all wanted Bernie. Bernie got voted out. None of us wanted that, but that still happened. We still do have some role to play.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So I want to start to end off our show. Thank you so much, Maisha, for joining me on this
Thank you for having me.
conversation. And we always end off every episode with en la unión está la fuerza. So on the count of three, we'll say it together. So
Mhm.
3, 2, 1. En la unión está la fuerza. So thank you so much.
For having